Hello, BookTube, and welcome to another weekly reading vlog. So I've been working on these books this past week, but before I talk about them, just quickly, I picked up a new book today, Dracula by Bram Stoker. So my intent is to read this for the month of October, Halloween month, when everyone should be reading scary books. I actually was thinking about reading this book last year for October, but I didn't get a chance to get into a bookstore last year in October, until the month of October was almost over. I live in Ho Chi Minh City here in Vietnam. I don't have my own car, so I take Grab, which is their equivalent of Uber. So I don't make it out to bookstores unless I'm in the shopping mall for some reason. And for whatever reason, last year I just didn't get a chance to get into the shopping mall until the month was almost over. So this year I thought, okay, starting in September, I'm going to keep my eyes open for a copy of Dracula so I can start reading it October 1st. Dracula is... It's a mid-sized book. This edition here is 365 pages. That's with somewhat small print. I'm a slow reader, so this is the kind of thing where I want to start at the beginning of the month. Last year, I ended up reading The Invisible Man for October, which was much shorter. So with Dracula, I'm going to try and start right on the dot, October 1st, and give myself as much time as possible to read this. I'll talk more about my history of this book when I actually get into it in the beginning of October. But just briefly, I have read this once before, kind of. I did it as an audiobook back in 2001. Arguably, audiobooks don't really count. I know there's a debate about that on BookTube. Lately I've begun to feel that books I've done on audiobook only kind of half count. Plus, it was all the way back in 2001, so way overdue for a reread of this. So this is going on my shelves, and I'll come back to this October 1st. Then, in terms of this week's reading, I have finally finished Marvel Horror Lives Again and filmed my review of it a couple days ago, which I'll link to in the description down below in case you missed it. This I'm kind of glad I'm done with it, if for no other reason than every week just lifting it up is a bit of an effort. I'm always like, oh, here it is. This was, I think, the biggest doorstopper I've read on this channel, maybe even ever. I mean, look at this thing. Finished with this now. So having finished with it, that opens up a new slot on my comic book. What do I want to say? It opens up a new space in my comic book slot. In my what do I call it? In the space I have allotted in my reading for comic books. So I'm now reading Marvel Epic Collection Thor: War of the Gods, which I'm still at the beginning of, in 84 pages, but am really enjoying it so far. The writing is really good. The stories are very imaginative. The artwork is good. This is what comic books should be. I have not enjoyed a comic book. Yeah, look at this. I've not enjoyed a comic book this much in, I think, since I've started reviewing comic books on this channel. It's superhero comic books written for children, or I think by this stage it was an older audience was beginning to read these things. So, it does have its limitations, but yeah, some good classic sci-fi writing in here. Sci-fi, fantasy, weird like in a good way type stories. Well written. I yeah. It makes me think. Actually, it makes me think that I was way too kind in my review of Marvel Horror Lives Again, because I said, well, some of these stories aren't really that good, but it's kind of fun to read through. This is fun to read through. This one could be a bit of a slog sometimes. But yeah, I shouldn't praise it too highly. I'm not even a fourth of the way through yet, so I'll hold off on final judgment. But so far, it's really a lot of fun. All right, and then Journey to the West. So, as I've mentioned the last couple weeks, with this remaining volume, I'm changing my approach to reading it. I'm just doing one episode a week, one story a week, instead of trying to plow on through it. I'm just going to, because I've come to the conclusion that was how it was meant to be enjoyed. It was meant to be savored for the individual stories, not something that you just kind of read as quickly as you could because you had a certain reading goal for this year or something like that. So I finished the story that started in the middle of chapter 84, in 85, and then finished chapter 86. So it was a chapter and a half. Like I mentioned last week, there was this weird thing where they changed stories right in the middle of the chapter, which usually this book doesn't do. Usually, a new chapters usually the story finishes up at the chapter breaks. Sometimes a story might go through for 2 or 3 chapters, but then when it does finish, it will finish at the chapter breaks, and the new chapter will be a new story. But there was one story last week that finished in the middle of a chapter. So, anyways, this week, the middle of chapter 85 and chapter 86. And it's a story I've mentioned before on this reading vlog. I think I've mentioned several times before that this book has a reputation for being repetitive. And this was a story that I thought was very repetitive. Repetitive from the stories that I've read earlier in this book. So they're going across a mountain. There's a demon who captures the monk because he wants to eat them, and then the monkey has to save the monk from the demon. I don't know how many times that particular story has popped up in this book so far. Yeah, the more you read it, the more repetitive it gets, I guess, as you get the more stories you read. This one. Yeah, what was unique about this one? Well, it started out, Monkey knows that there's demons. He can kind of sense them or see their presence, so he flies up on his cloud. He can see the demons are in the mountains, but then he has this idea he's going to go in and kill them all. But then he thinks to himself, well, no, that wouldn't be very chivalrous of me to kind of just kill them unprovoked. So I'll trick Pig into going. So he tricks Pig, and he tells Pig that there are these people who love to feed monks. And they're preparing all these food for the monks to eat. And Pig, of course, is a huge glutton. So Pig rushes right into it and then gets surrounded by the demons. And they're all tugging at them. And Pig says, okay, calm down. You can each feed me one at a time. Just don't pull at me. And the demons just laughed. They said, we're not here to feed you. Who told you that we feed you? We're here to eat you. And so there's a fight. And I actually forget what happened exactly. Apologies. Either Pig beat them, or I think he got captured maybe, and Monkey had to save him. But then the demons find out that they're escorting the monk, and that this monk has purified flesh that if you eat it will grant you immortality. So then the demons want to eat the monk. They capture him. They Yeah, one of the demon kings, his like chief, one of his advisors, develops a plan where one of the demon from their army, one of the top warriors from the demon army, fights each of the disciples. So one fights monkey, one fights pig, one fights friar sand, and while the disciples are engaged fighting the demons, then they're able to come down and snatch the monk and capture him. So the monkey and the pig try to rescue the monk. They find the demon's hideout. The demon tries to trick monkey and pig into thinking that the monk has already been eaten by giving them a fake human head and saying it's the monk's head, and that they're able to change the fake head to look like a human head. But monkey realizes it's not a real human head because it's too heavy and it sounds hollow. So he throws it around and saying, see, it sounds all wrong. So then the demons go and they get a real human head. Apparently they have a store of them from past humans they've captured and eaten. I don't know why they didn't start off with the real human head to begin with. They transform it to look like the monk's head, send it back up. And this time Monkey is almost kind of fooled. That they do think that it's probably the monk's real head and go into mourning. But Monkey still wants to find out what's going on, so he disguises himself as an insect, or transforms himself into an insect, flies into the demon's cave, eventually finds out that the monk is still alive and being chained up. And then he gets Pig and Friar Sand, and there's a huge battle with the demons, and then they eventually just kill the Demon King and release the monk. And there's another man who's also a prisoner of the demons, and that was a slight variation from formula. Usually they just save the monk, but this time there was another man chained up there who ended up turns out to be a woodcutter, and the woodcutter brought them back to his home. And gave them some food and advice, and he said, "You're almost to India. Don't give up." And that was the end. So it was a story that has often been told before in this collection, in this book. The monk gets captured by a demon in the mountains. Monkey and Pig have to rescue him and fight the demons and kill the demons. And at this point, that particular story is getting very old. It's been told so many times in this book. What can you do, huh? So that was Journey to the West for this week, and then Wolf Hall. So I finished parts 3 and 4 this week, or finished part 4 this week rather. I think I'd finished part 3 last time. So having finished parts 3 and 4, I went back to Steve Donahue and checked in with his videos, because earlier this year, Steve Donahue did Wolf Hall for his book club, and he did a video on parts 1 and 2, parts 3 and 4, and parts 5 and 6. So having finished up parts 3 and 4, it was time to go back and watch Steve Donahue's video, and I'll link to it in the description down below. I also posted it on my blog and wrote my thoughts on Steve's thoughts, my commentaries on Steve's commentary. Although for the most part, I don't really have any additional commentary to give. I'm glad Steve made those videos, because it's good for me to see Wolf Hall through his eyes. I guess when it comes to it, I'm just not that literary. I like books that have plot and action and things happening, but I don't really appreciate prose style so much, and would often prefer a much clearer, simpler prose style than the one that Hilary Mantel is given in this book. But hearing Steve enthuse over how great the writing style is makes me see it a little bit through his eyes. So I'm appreciative of that. And I'll link to his videos in the description down below. I'm not going to try and summarize what happens in these pages because so much happens. Actually, there's a lot of what happens actually happens off screen, so to speak. So there's major events happening, but they're kind of only referenced in passing in the book. But there's all these conversations with all these different people and a whole big cast of characters. I did have occasion a couple times where reading this book this past week. There was something. The characters would allude back to a past conversation, or allude back to something that had been said several pages ago. And I was a little bit disturbed to discover I only vaguely recollected what they were talking about. And I had to go back and check those pages again. And I thought to myself, this is one of those things you think when you reach middle age. Oh no, has it finally happened? Am I beginning to lose my memory a bit? My mother had terrible memory when she was my age. Of course, she wouldn't appreciate me talking about this. I don't know. It's a little bit hard to tell. I do think when I was in high school, I was a bit sharper at remembering plot details, but I don't think I was sharper by much. It's a bit hard to evaluate these things, isn't it? Especially because your past self no longer exists. You only have vague memories of what you used to be like in high school. But I remember even in high school having to go back and check pages in a historical fiction book like this to remind myself of certain plot points. As well as, I'm just tired all the time because I'm working a lot and I have 2 young kids. And so it could be lack of sleep as much as anything else, more than age, that is causing me to forget a little bit some of these plot points. But I do think it's also a little bit the nature of this book, where there's so many things just dropped in conversation. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to know what to hang on to, what to pay attention to, what to remember, when 50 pages later, somebody's making an allusion to a conversation that happened 50 pages earlier, if that makes sense. I am still largely enjoying this book, though. There's a lot of interesting period details. I've been going to Wikipedia a lot to look up various characters and think, oh, did that really happen? Or was that just made up from the novel? As usually is the case with these kind of things, a lot of times it did really happen. So I don't know if it's cheating to be constantly consulting Wikipedia. There are some characters that they're trying to set up like some ominous foreshadowing about their fate, or the author is, I guess. In that case, is it cheating to just go over to Wikipedia and see what actually happens to these characters? I don't know. Although, Hilary Mantel did write this book in 2009, so like it wasn't something that predates the internet. It was written during the age of Wikipedia, so she surely must have known that her readers had that option of going to Wikipedia and just looking stuff up. But anyways, a very interesting book. If I was a more literary person, I'm sure I would appreciate the prose as much as Steve does. But I'm glad Steve is there to appreciate the prose and make videos about it, so I can kind of see it through his eyes a bit. And that's all my reading for this week. So I will check in again next week. Thank you, BookTube.